Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we are going to talk about interest rate parity. Okay, so generally speaking, it's about foreign exchange and interest rates between countries. And there's this balance, this matching that it's supposed to happen, or not supposed to happen, it does happen, but it's a balance that there's between difference in interest rates and difference between foreign exchange. And as one moves, the other one moves along with it. Now, do they happen at the same time? Well, in theory, yes, but there could be discrepancies from time to time. And we're going to go ahead and identify how to identify the discrepancy and to see if you can make money during those times where they're not balanced out. So let's go to the example so you can kind of see what we're talking about. Let's first look at this piece here. Okay, so let's say you're out there in the securities markets and whatnot, and there's a forward contract that you can sign. And what you're doing is, in this case, is getting in a negotiation with another person saying that in 6 months from now, half a year, in 6 months from now, regardless of what the exchange rate is, we agree to exchange dollars and euros at 1.27. So you are locking in, guaranteeing an exchange rate of 1.27 6 months from now. Then we look at the lending and borrowing rates, current ones. The euro, and in this case, let's say France, but it could be any country with a euro, but let's say France. And what we see is that the risk-free rate in the United States might be at 6%. So borrowing and lending without risk can be done at 6%. And in the foreign country, in this case, France, we're going to say that their rate is at 4%. So borrowing and lending can happen at 4%. Then we look at what is today's, right now, the rate between euros and dollars. So we say the exchange rate is at 1.25. All right. Let's first see, well, these two here are the annual rates, the yearly rates. So let's first go ahead and convert it to the 6-month percentage. And all we're going to do is change this. Let me just do it real quick. The 6% of the home country times the 0.5 years. So every 6 months is 3%. Same thing here, the 4% of France times the half a year. Or you can divide it by 2, 0.5 years is twice a year, and that's what happens. So that's the 6-month rate, the period rate. Could be quarterly, it could be every 4 months, it depends. Weekly, monthly, whatever it is. It just depends on your forward contract, the time you have to wait to get that rate. So then we come here and we want to look at the implied forward rate. What we do is we use this formula, and we're going to solve for the forward rate. So we take this and multiply by this. Okay, so no problem. I'll take my spot rate, what is happening now, and I'm going to multiply by 1 plus the, hold on 1 second, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, let's start again. We take the spot rate times 1 plus the period rate, because we're doing it for 6 months, divided by 1 plus, then put that parenthesis, divided by 1 plus the forward rate. And what it's telling us is that the implied forward rate is 1.2623 and maybe some more decimals. What's important here is that what this is telling us, according to the current conditions of the difference in value of the currency and the difference in interest rates, in 6 months from now, this is what you it implied that would be the exchange rate in the future. But you have the opportunity to lock in a contract today to get this rate instead of that rate. So there might be an opportunity here to make some extra money than what it will look by just looking at the percentages. If you just look at the percentages, then okay, 6% here, 4% here. You pick the 6%. Why go for 4% when you can have an opportunity for 6%? Same risk assumed here. So let's do a calculation over here to see if this difference can make us change our mind between investing at 6% or the 4%. So let's see what happens in the United States. This one's easy. If you take $1,000 that you have and you do it for 6 months in the United States, so that's the 3%, you make the $30 and you end up with $1,030. Your annual return, you take the new, then you do a parenthesis, take the new minus the old, divided by the old. Now that's going to look at 3% because of the $30, but remember, we are looking for the annual return. So if that happened in 6 months, you will multiply by 2. Now in this case, just to use the information we have on the spreadsheet, multiplying by 2 or dividing by the 0.5 years will give you the same amount. Okay, so I make 6% a year. That's the equivalent, the yearly return. What happens if I convert this money to euros, the $1,000, and invest in France at the 4%? And then convert it back with the forward contract rate that I have. So I sign a forward contract rate, I convert it to euros, invest in France, and then 6 months later, I get this back by using this rate, not this rate. So if I first convert my $1,000 to euros by dividing by the spot rate, I get 800 euros right now. And I go ahead and invest it in France, and I get that 2% rate, right? So this times my 6 months at 4% annual, but only do 6 months, so it's that. I get these many euros back in 6 months from now. Now what happens, remember, in 6 months from now, it doesn't matter what the exchange rate is. I get this amount because I signed that contract. So if I convert this to my guaranteed rate, I actually get back 1,036. So let's go through the process where I take the new amount I have. This is US dollars, so I have to go back to my original 1,000. Minus the old amount I had, divided by the old amount. And because that I want the annual return, once again, I'm going to take everything and divide it by 5%. So now I have a 7.26% annual return. So not only you see how you got a few more dollars than here, it reflects on the annual return. If you stayed in the States, 6%. But if you take advantage of the 4% in France plus the exchange rate that you can lock in, you actually make a little more money. So the 6 and 4% is deceiving because of this difference here. So you actually make a little more money. Now, what does that mean in the arbitrage realm? Well, here you use your own money and some risk-free stuff. So that's fine. You had a risk-free return, excess return there. Without any risk, all you did was a few transactions, you make some money. But when that happens, then there's actually an opportunity here to make money without having to invest any of your money. So you can have absolutely no investment. And when you make a return without investment, that's an infinite return. Your return on investment, return on equity is infinite. And that's what we're going to look about here, the concept of arbitrage, because it becomes zero risk, zero equity. Now, we're calling it zero risk, zero equity because these rates are considered risk-free rates. Now, you're in the United States right now. Well, you can borrow at 6%. Okay, fine. So I'm going to borrow $50 million. Now, I know you can't just walk in a place and ask for $50 million, but think these big corporations, these big investment banks, all these Wall Street people, they can do that and a lot more. So they just do just any number that they have access to, but let's say $50 million. So what you do is you're borrowing that amount. You're using zero of your money, nothing out of your pocket. Somebody gave you this money. So you take somebody's money and you convert it to euros. All right, remember, you still have access to this contract. So we convert that to euros. I'm going to divide it by the spot rate. Now I have $12 million in euros. So I take those 12 million euros and I lend it in France. So that's how much I'm going to lend in France. By lend in France means you are buying bonds or whatever at this rate, the 4% annual rate. All right. Now remember, 6 months, we're going to use these, but the point is, I borrow in the United States and I lend in France. So let's see what happens 6 months later. So 6 months later, you get the 12 million you lend plus interest. So we're going to go ahead and grow that by the 2% in France because it was 6 months only. And that's how many euros you get back. Now you convert that to US dollars. We put that, multiply by, now it's 6 months from now. So you get to use the forward contract rate. Doesn't matter what the rate is on the market, you have that contract. So you're going to end up with $50,544,800. Now, because this was not your money, you borrowed it, you have to pay back some interest on the 15 million. So you borrowed this amount, remember, you're going to pay 6% later. Well, 3% is 6 months. So you pay this much interest at 3% for 6 months, right? You have to pay that the principal, the 50 million you originally borrowed too. So how much profit? So I had this much, I paid back interest, I paid back principal, and I ended up with $94,800. Now, the important thing to understand here is that it wasn't your money. You took somebody else's money, held it for 6 months, gave it back to them with some interest, and you still ended up with $94,800. That is an infinite return on investment. You can calculate that. And we call it zero risk because these were interest-free rates. And you had a contract in place to guarantee that exchange rate. And that's what we call arbitrage, when you can make money without having to take risk or put any of your money in. And you can just put any number you want there, $1 billion. And $1 billion is nothing to some of those people. And then those are big investment banks. Sometimes they get together when they find these things. It's $1 billion there, $6 million in 6 months, just by, hey, put this money here for a little bit, bring it back, done. Now, what happens whether you do it this way or that way? When people, because you're not going to be the only one doing it, everybody's going to see it. They start borrowing money in the United States and lending money in France. So one thing how this corrects itself and disappears really fast is because as the borrowing increases in the United States, that 6% is going to go up because supply and demand. The more you demand borrowing, then it becomes more expensive, the price goes up. And in France, as you lending money at 4%, that is going to go down, that 4%, because there's a large supply of money. So as those percentages change, it makes this disappear to zero. So that's why when people, whenever there's a spotted, whoever moves fast and quicker and ahead of time, they make a little money, but it disappears pretty fast. So that's the deal. However, it's just something to keep an eye on, because that interest rate parity, it's how you spot things that are not in equilibrium, and there's money to be made when they're not in equilibrium. Now, this is important for corporations because a lot of hedging goes on with forward contracts. A lot of international corporations care about these things, and you have to keep an eye on this because it can make a difference on your profitability. As we've seen in previous exercises, when the exchange rates change or the interest rates change, is going to impact your actual profit in US dollars or whatever your home country is. This last piece here, purchasing power parity, it's very similar to what we did before when you compare the exchange rates and what happens with the price in another country when you go there. The idea is the same way. These things are supposed to match. And if they don't, you can make money. Here, if the price in one country does not match the other price, there could be an opportunity to make money. Quick verbal example. Here, all we're doing is if the price in the US is $2 And we're doing an example without transaction costs. Like there's no tariffs, quotas, and all that. It's just you can get the message. Well, whatever product sells for $2 in the United States, after everything is said and done, the product in France, in this case, based on the spot rate, should be 160 euros. Now, in real life, you have to include shipping costs and all that, but let's just, for the example. The idea is, if for any reason the price in the US is not $2 when this one's 160, or vice versa, where the price in the US is $2 and this one is not 160, there could be an opportunity of buying in one country, selling in another, and making extra profit by the difference in price. And similar to this arbitrage, you can go ahead, let's say it was selling in France for euros 170, just to say a number, 175. I want the two decimals to show up. So because the spot rate is at 125, then you can go to the company that sells it for $2 and say like, hey, let me get a bunch of that, and I'm gonna go sell it in France, and I pay you later. And this is normal in business. You get supplied and you pay later. So no money out of your pocket, you get the product, sell it in France for a little higher, and then when it comes back, you pay by the two, you make the difference because the parity was not broken. But the same thing happens as you do that. As you start buying more of these, that number is gonna go up. And it start just selling more of those in France, this number is gonna go down. And eventually gonna meet to where the parity meets again. And that's just supply and demand in action. So when the price parity is not met, there's an opportunity to do one of those arbitrage things, different mechanism, but that's the message, that's the idea. That when there's different rates and exchange rates not matching on the implied ones, you have opportunity to make money without having to invest. You just grab from one, sell another, come back, pay them back, and you keep the difference. We're gonna stop the video here. That is our parity portion of the course.